Hi, this is Boaz from Fred's Piano Service. Greetings to the Nantucket Community Music Center. Fred and I thought it would be nice to make a short film just talking a little bit about the history of piano, how pianos work, a little bit about ourselves, and piano care and maintenance. So Fred started out as a piano technician at the Berklee College of Music in about 1991 as a student there, and he was trained by Yamaha. And he's had the business now for about 25 years. He's also been trained at Steinway & Sons and at Yamaha Artist Services. As for myself, this is my 20th year as a piano technician. I went to the North Bennett Street School. So I started there in 2001. And I've known Fred about 19 years. I worked at Steinway for a few years, and I was trained at Steinway factories in New York and Hamburg. So between the two of us, we have about 5 decades of experience working on pianos. So the piano itself was invented in about 1700 by an Italian named Cristofori. He adapted an existing keyboard instrument, the harpsichord, and a little bit of the clavichord to a new invention he called a pianoforte, meaning an instrument that plays both soft and loud. At that time, keyboard instruments only played with one dynamic. So that was the invention of the escapement and the ability for a piece called a hammer to hit strings to play with dynamic range. So this design of the pianoforte continued until about the early 19th century. And during the 19th century, there were many developments which led to the modern piano as we know it, which came about in about the mid-1870s. There's a nice connection in New England with Boston. Several famous piano makers got their start in Boston, as well as inventors such as Jonas Chickering, Alpheus Babcock. Between the two of them, they invented the cast iron frame, which holds all the tension of the strings on the piano. And so during that time, the 1820s till about the Civil War, there were many developments in the size of pianos, the dynamic range, the volume. The repertoire was developing as composers looked for more range, larger instruments, as well as the concert situation changed. There were less concerts given in private residences and many more concerts given in increasingly larger concert halls. So this all led to pianos needing to be larger and at a higher performance level. And this also led to the development of the Viennese action, which is what we call a single escapement, and eventually the double escapement action. And this allows for very fast repetition and much more control over the piano itself. So all of these inventions led to the modern piano. So speaking of the mechanism, I've got a couple of action models here. We can show you the basics of how a piano works. We'll start with the grand. The modern action, the Yamaha action. As you can see, there's the key coverings. This is the part you see basically outside the piano. So you press the key and this whole little clockwork starts moving. This is a series of levers and springs. You can see the string is represented by this metal bar here. That would be the string that would make a sound. So as you lift the hammer to the string, this is in slow motion, the hammer itself hits the string, the damper, which is here, this rises, this is timed. Damper rises to allow the string to vibrate, and then as the hammer falls, the damper comes down. We often call the damper the brakes. So again, we'll show you in this regular motion. The double escapement allows approximately 12 repetitions per second, so it's pretty fast. As you can see, there's all these parts, and these all need maintenance, which is called regulation. Pianos are regulated as are clocks. This means alignment of the different screws and parts and the springs, alignment of the flanges, which also can get loose in dry conditions, and as well as the back check. You can see this allows the hammer to be prepared for repetition. That's checking. So these are all the different components that need maintenance, as well as the key bushings. This is what holds the key on the key pins to what's called a key frame. So you can imagine this is wood, and then there is a wool cloth bushing. And over time, this wears out, needs to be replaced. This is the same with some of the action parts. Over the years, they will wear out and will need replacement. In fact, right now, we are working on the school's Steinway Model L, which has been in need of a major upgrade for its action and damper system for years now, and we've got that in our shop. So we're installing an entirely new action mechanism. So that's the whip-in, the hammer shank, the hammer felts, the back checks. We're also doing the damper system. It's the back action here. The damper felts. This is all getting redone. We rebushed the keys. So that project it's pretty big. That piano is going to be coming back online into service this fall when it's completed. So that's the basics of how a grand action works. And most grand actions are very similar. The design has been fairly standardized over the years. Yamaha got its start as a piano maker, as a matter of fact, before they branched off into other industries and manufacturing. Started off as a piano and organ maker, and they got their start basically copying the German and American designs and then refining that over time to their own design. The school has got 3 Yamahas, the 2 grands and the upright, and the school also has 3 Steinways: the Steinway upright, the Steinway Model A in the parlor, the Steinway L that is at our shop, and the school also has a Boston grand. Boston are made by Kawai but designed by Steinway. And last but not least, the 2 Baldwins. There is a Baldwin Concert Grand currently in storage, and then there is the slightly smaller Baldwin Semi-Concert Grand, which is down in the lower level. Baldwin was a very renowned American piano maker, a competitor to Steinway, as a matter of fact, pre-war. So the school has got some very good quality pianos, and I thought we'd give you some insights as to how they work. And then here is an upright action model. So you can see an upright is quite a bit different. There's the key, balance rail. This represents the key frame. Same idea, it's got bushed keys. However, there's no back action on these because everything has got to go vertical. We don't have gravity on our side, so we've got to use more springs and levers for the piano to work. As you can see, there's a vertical orientation of everything. Here's the strings. Hammer hits the string. It's activated by this series of springs and levers. You've got the repetitions, hammer butts, the checks, bridle straps, damper posts, damper head itself, hammer shank, and a hammer. Also, on some uprights, depending on their size, their height, you can have a capstan here or something called abstracts. This geometry changes as you get higher. So the idea is, same idea as the grand. Hammer hits the string, comes away, and there goes the brakes. That's the damper. However, it all needs to be regulated just so that you can try to get as much repetition as possible. Uprights are not quite as fast as a grand, but a good quality upright, you can still get something like about 10 repetitions per second. Again, this is a full-size Yamaha mock-up. This is a Yamaha action model, but the principle of most upright actions are basically the same, with the exception of a spinet, which has a dropped action. It goes down below the keys. Thankfully, the school does not have any spinets, and we try not to work on them too much. They're very difficult to work on, and they're all quite old now. But generally, full-size uprights and studio uprights have a full-size action. It's very efficient. It's very well designed. Put these back. Okay, so the components of piano care. The first component of any piano maintenance program is humidity control. Pianos are much like people. They like to be comfortable. They like to be in an environment that's about 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit at about 40 to 50% relative humidity. It's not always realistic, especially in our climate. So there are two ways we can control the humidity. The primary method is to install what's called the Damp Chaser Piano Lifesaver system. This is a system that is made specifically for pianos. It goes inside the piano, and that regulates the relative humidity right next to the soundboard. So it preserves the soundboard, prevents cracks, helps promote stability of pitch, makes the tuning last longer. So Fred and I have been installing piano lifesavers for many years. They are endorsed by all of the piano manufacturers. And that's the best way to control the humidity inside the piano. Barring that, controlling the environment, controlling the room, trying to keep the ambient humidity as close to 40 to 50% as possible. Again, this can be very challenging. In our winters, it gets very, very dry, sometimes below 20% humidity. And in the summer as well, especially up here in Boston, we can see 70, 80% humidity. As you can imagine, you think of the soundboard as a big spring, it's going to swell up in the humidity, which makes the pitch go sharp, and it's going to bow down or collapse slightly in the dry weather. This makes the pitch go flat. So we try to minimize all this movement of this huge spring of the soundboard. Once we get the humidity controlled, the next important part of piano maintenance is regular tuning. Now, people often ask us, how often should a piano be tuned? Well, we have recording studios that we tune pianos inside once a week. Concert halls have pianos tuned before every concert. For example, as well, the Nantucket Chamber Music Society has the piano tuned before every concert during the season. The opposite extreme of that would be, say, your home piano, which we recommend at least every 6 months. It's recommended by the manufacturers that tunings are done 4 times a year. So we highly recommend 4 times a year. It helps promote stability, and of course, pianos are always much more fun to play and sound much better when they're in tune. It's also much easier to maintain a piano that is regularly tuned. When a piano has a longer interval between tunings, say a year or more, the pitch can vary widely. It involves often a pitch correction during a tuning. The tuning itself is more difficult because the piano is more out of tune. Pianos basically go more and more out of tune as time passes. They just continue to get more and more out of tune. Generally, they go flatter of standard pitch. Again, standard pitch these days is not always 440 hertz. There are orchestras such as the BSO that are somewhere around 443, which is also the European standard. And then everything in between, there's 441 and a half, there's 442. What we tend to do is tune the piano where it wants to be, where it's the most stable, unless we're specifically requested to tune the piano to a pitch such as A442 or A440. So regular tuning. Next is regulation. That's, again, we showed you with the action models. That's making sure the parts are all aligned, working efficiently, working effectively, they're lubricated, the friction is correct. So regulation is generally done every 6 to 12 months. Concert pianos are regulated every 3 to 6 months, make sure they're performing optimally. So regulation is basically the alignment of the parts, making sure everything is tight. There's a lot of wood in piano actions and a lot of wool, and these are subject to humidity changes. This is why regulation changes over time. Regulation is another routine maintenance that we often do on pianos and on school pianos. And of course, any kind of performance piano needs to be at a performance level, so those are regulated more often. Repairs. Repairs are basically, like it sounds, any part that's broken, worn out, in need of replacement, and that can range from repairing any of the buckskin or the leather to replacing any of the wool or cloth components, as we talked about earlier, such as the key bushings. The felt of the hammers. Hammers become worn, compacted over time. They don't get a very good sound. Again, this is another reason why we're doing the action on the Steinway L. It's due for new hammers. Much better sound, much more balance. So that's considered a repair or rebuilding or restoration. Those are all kind of interchangeable terms. Rebuilding, we're very specific about what rebuilding is. When you rebuild an action, that means you are putting new parts in. Anything other than rebuilding an action would be a restoration or refurbishment. That's working with what's there. We also do partial rebuilds of actions where, say, we'll just do part of the assembly, such as the hammers, maybe not everything. And as far as rebuilding the interior of the piano, what we call structural, often people say, well, my piano was rebuilt. Well, the piano is only rebuilt when it gets a new pin block. This is what holds the tuning pins, and restrung. If it's cleaned up or strings are installed in the original pin block, again, that is refurbishing, restoration, repair. It's not rebuilding. So structurally, piano's got three components: the structural, the action, and the case. So structural meaning the soundboard, the bridges, the pin block, cast iron frame, strings, tuning pins. Again, these all wear out eventually. Most pianos are built for about a 50-year service life. After that, they can be rebuilt. We've seen Steinways that have been rebuilt 2-3 times. So pianos can continue their service life by undergoing extensive repair and rebuilding work. So often soundboards wear out. They develop too many cracks based on the climate or age, and they can be replaced. A soundboard of a piano is not like a violin in that it does not need to be preserved for the piano's value or for its tone. In fact, the opposite is true. A piano soundboard basically starts wearing out after about its 5th year. And depending on the maker and the materials used for the soundboard, they can last a very long time. But eventually they will need to be replaced. They do wear out. We do find Steinways of the so-called classic era, from the teens to the 20s, where the soundboard is completely intact and sounds fantastic. And then you can find pianos built in the 70s or the 80s where the soundboard is completely worn out. It really depends on the piano and the environment and the kind of care the piano has received. Stringing, another operation, it's pretty major. You've got 240, 250, 260 strings. Then you've also got the bass strings, which are custom made. So stringing is another major repair that we often do on pianos, especially a piano that's got completely rusted strings, corroded bass strings that are worn out. Restringing can really enliven a piano short of major rebuilding. It's another option. As we talked about earlier, the damper system, which is related to the strings, but it is part of the action. Dampers can wear out, the felt can wear out, the mechanism can wear out, just like with the action. So action, structural, and then the case. The case, when we refer to case, we're talking about the furniture. So the finish, whether it's ebonized, a wood finish, and then within the finish types, there are basically 2 types. There's satin, meaning a bit of a matte finish, more of a hand-rubbed. And then high gloss, also called super high polish. High gloss is basically a mirror finish. High gloss used to be done in a glossed up lacquer. These days it tends to be polyester, more like a finish on your car. It's very durable. It's a mirror finish. However, if polyester gets damaged or is subjected to extreme cold, it can develop cracks and major problems, which can be very difficult to repair. What we like about lacquer, a lacquer finish is quite easy to repair. We usually hire a specialist to do so, but lacquer can be filled in. It's generally a soft finish. It's a little bit easier to touch up and repair. But again, the finish can be taken care of just mostly by being careful around the piano and not using any kind of harsh cleaners on the case. And lastly, what I'd like to talk about, which is another process that we often do on pianos. It's called voicing. And voicing is manipulating the hammer felt itself to get the tone we want. So we can do that by needling the felt, by shaping the felt. We use various emery cloth and sandpaper to do so. That can affect the sound. Also, we also can use chemistry at times. Mostly this is in the form of a hammer hardener, which can build tone to get more power, get a better sound in various applications in the felt itself. And the same with needling. Through training and experience, you develop an ear for the particular voice of the piano. And voicing, often people think, is exactly like tuning. And in fact, voicing is it's quite different from tuning. Tuning is one of those things where a piano is either in tune or it's not in tune. Sort of what we call a go, no-go. Fred and I, being oral tuners, are very fussy about tuning. Same with regulation. Regulation is one of those things that's a go, no-go. Either a piano is regulated somewhat, or fully regulated, or out of regulation. There are specs we use for regulation. Now, for voicing, voicing is one of those things that's very subjective. It's the quality of tone, how the piano sounds, what its character is, what its dynamic range is, what kind of color you can achieve with the piano through pianissimo all the way to fortissimo. So voicing requires a lot of experience, a lot of skill, and also being able to translate what a musician, a pianist, wants into what do you have to do to the piano to achieve that sound that's desired. And often it's not possible. Hammers are too worn, they've got too much hardener, they're too brittle, what have you. And in that case, we would put a new set of hammers on, voice them from scratch. And the type of felts we use are based on what kind of piano we're working on. Whether it's a Yamaha or a Baldwin or Steinway. We have many choices in felt these days. We have about 12 choices in different hammer felt. So it's kind of exciting. There's a lot of choice that we didn't used to have for hammer felt. So that's the brief description of maintenance. Again, humidity control, tuning, regulation, repairs, and voicing. We try to keep up the pianos at a fairly high level at the school with all of these factors of piano maintenance. We've also found lately that there's an increase in what are called hybrid pianos. Hybrid pianos are a digital piano that has a piano action. So it has wooden keys, a wooden action, but instead of felt hitting strings, the hammers are hitting sensors or solenoids that trigger sound through MIDI or some other proprietary electronics that the manufacturer has either patented or has licensed from another manufacturer. And that system of electronics translates the impulse of the hammer into sound, and that can be amplified through onboard speakers or through headphones. Hybrids can be a great teaching tool, and they can also be used for recording and also for practice, say after hours. You can wear headphones, nobody hears you practice. So hybrids are really starting to take off, as are player pianos. Some of you may recall the old player pianos where it was a player roll that's threaded in and then it plays back a song. Nowadays, we've moved beyond even the CD, and most players that are made at this point, whether it's the Steinway Spirio or the Yamaha Disclavier, which are the two best systems out there, those are used completely wirelessly through your iPad or your iPhone or other wireless device, which basically means you have an unlimited library. And some of the player systems, such as Disclavier and Spirio, often integrate video as well. So say you've got a video of Lang Lang playing a Spirio, you will see him playing and you will hear his playing through the piano itself that's in front of you, whether it's a Spirio B or Spirio D. And then the newest Spirio, which is the Spirio R, like the Disclavier, allows for recording. So that's kind of the future of what's going to be happening with pianos. Again, acoustic pianos are still going to be made, but there is a trend towards the hybrid and towards the player piano. They're becoming more popular. And also for people who don't play or who would like to enjoy piano in their home, they might buy a player piano so that they can enjoy it. And the player pianos are acoustic pianos. They function exactly like an acoustic piano. They need to be regulated and tuned, and the humidity needs to be controlled. As far as we know, there's a couple Spirio Steinways on the island and several disc claviers. And Fred and I have been through all of the factory training for all of the player systems. So that includes Steinway Spirio, Yamaha disc clavier, piano disc, and QRS. Piano disc and QRS are aftermarket players that can be installed in any piano. Spirio is installed only at the Steinway factory on a new piano, and Yamaha disc clavier is also only installed at the Yamaha factory in Japan and only on new pianos. So sadly, you cannot upgrade a piano to a disc clavier or a Spirio. Be great, but we can't do that. So that's probably about it. I tried to keep this a little under a half hour so as not to bore you all with we could keep going on and on, but it's the basic idea of piano care. Fred and I are very grateful to be able to work on pianos on Nantucket as part of our overall roster. Our territory is quite big now. We have literally thousands of pianos we take care of. Our territory now ranges from Boston up towards Concord, New Hampshire, out to Western Mass, through to Rhode Island, the South Coast, Cape Cod, and Nantucket. So that's sort of our big circle. And a few years ago as well, we started taking on clients in New York City and in Westchester County. Matter of fact, I am headed to New York very soon for July service work. So we keep pretty busy. We've got to go where the pianos are. We're a very small company. It's basically just me and Fred on the road. We've got a staff member in our workshop, and I occasionally will work in the shop as well with Ian. Excellent technician, and he's doing our shop work right now. And then, of course, Jenny, which some of you, of course, may know from the phone or email. Jenny is our business manager, and she runs the office. She basically runs our schedule, handles the accounts, that kind of thing. So we're a very small company, but we like to think we provide a very personalized service. And we've been around for a while. We've done pretty well considering the pandemic and what some of our colleagues have been through. To be honest, we didn't really enjoy having to close down for almost 2 months, but we had to due to the quarantine. And as of Memorial Day in 2020, we've been very busy. There have been a lot of customers wanting piano work, which has been great because we didn't get to do our performance venues, our jazz clubs, our restaurant and corporate work. The entire theater district in Boston closed. It's just opening up now, and the tours are coming back. But we've been very grateful to be able to work through the pandemic. We've also done a lot of shop work. We've completed about a dozen full action rebuilds, the most we've ever done. We've had several pianos in the shop for rebuilding. So we've kept pretty busy. So we appreciate your support of our work. We appreciate our continued service at the Community Music Center. And if after this short film you have any questions or you want to learn a bit more maybe about pianos and how they work, don't hesitate to email us, give us a ring, or if you see Fred at the school and you want to stop and chat about pianos for a few minutes. Fred's like me. He loves talking about our work, loves talking about pianos and sharing what it is that we do. We love our job. We're very passionate about piano work. We're both former musicians, so we understand the needs of musicians, and we're here to serve. So again, thank you so much, and we hope you all have a good summer.